Can we move on now to the second piece
Yes. Cool.
in some notable clusters?
Before you do move on,
Yes.
just a final thing. We came up with a little phrase for each piece that we thought summed it up
Yes, that's right.
on
Yes.
a deeper level rather
Yes.
than just a musical jargon and techniques and whatever. And this one, I think it was something like the birth of the arousal of the senses or something like that.
I think the arousal of the senses.
arousal of the
I think
senses.
the arousal of the senses. So
Which makes me think that this whole piece, in this format of 9 sections, is like a birth to death piece. We'll come to that later, but this is the thing.
you mean from the first movement to the last movement?
Yeah, because the
from 1 to
baby,
9.
when he's born,
Yes.
or she is born,
Okay. Yes.
the first thing they kind of get to know is their senses. And so this is like the first piece in a life to death piece, if you like.
Yes, that's right. Yes, indeed. Yes, that's quite right. So the arousal of the senses, I believe, and we wanted a short phrase with not too many words, maybe not a full sentence, which summed up the way we felt about these individual clusters.
Yeah, plus.
And moving on to the second piece now, this is called the Medusa Nebula, Gemini, and each one has a very distinct character, and of course the constellations and the night sky that we look at have been assigned these names by various scientists and historians through the ages, and in themselves, by their very nature, have very different images that they conjure up in our mind. So the Medusa Nebula, can you just give a brief description of visually what that represents in the sky?
Yes, the Medusa Nebula is a diffuse gaseous nebula. It's a gas which is lit up by stars being born, if I remember right. But the interesting thing about this piece is that Medusa, of course, is the Greek. Well, she's not a hero. She's the Greek character who has the famous head of snakes and her stare.
The wild crone.
Yeah, exactly. Stare
Sometimes
turns you to stone. But a Medusa, I think in Latin, definitely in Russian, is a jellyfish. And of course the jellyfish has all these tentacles coming off the bottom, which is like the snaky hair. So this is the image that dominates this particular section.
Yes.
But there's one thing to say quickly about that I didn't mention about the ecliptic, is that of course this is the Medusa Nebula in Gemini, and I was brought up thinking that I was born in Gemini because that's when my birthday is. But actually, if you look at the real place where the sun is on the ecliptic, I wasn't born in Gemini at all. And in fact, there are 14 constellations around what people call the zodiac. And Scorpius, for example, the sun is only in Scorpius for 7 days, and then there's this huge gap for the constellation Ophiuchus, which we'll come to later, where nobody's born under Ophiuchus, are they? You don't hear somebody say, "Oh, I'm an Ophiuchus."
No, I've never heard that.
The sun is actually in Ophiuchus for something
Particular
like
phrase,
16
or
days. So
even a reference to that part of the universe. No,
and
this is
Cetus
a new
as
one
well.
to me as well.
Cetus, one day.
Yes.
If you're born on March the 14th, you're actually a Cetus, you're not a Pisces.
Right, yes, yeah.
And Pisces isn't anywhere in that place anymore.
Well, needless to
Sun,
say, I mean, the space, as we could say, is an infinitely complex place. Certainly, it's certainly verging on that. If there is an end to the universe, well, it might not be absolute, but how do we know?
But is there a restaurant there at the end of the
Well,
universe?
and that's the thing, we don't know. And I mean, a central aspect of this, as with, there happens to be a particular place at the end. We simply don't know the answers to the big questions. That's an underlying theme, of course, about this piece. And we'll talk more about that, I think, as we talk about the other movements, that aspect of unanswered questions.
Yes.
And so with this video, we came up with a very different feel. And when we looked through this, we came up with a phrase that summed it up, which was frozen state of hysteria. I think frozen state of hysteria because of the Medusa element. She's the monster with a head of snakes, which will turn you to stone if she catches your gaze, if she stares at you, as we know. And so therefore, if that did ever happen, and of course we see in movies and literature that it is, it is one of these stories which has been conveyed many times. You would at once be frozen in a state, even if it was as stone, but you'd still have awareness. You wouldn't be dead, and so hence the hysteria, the sheer fear of encountering. And of course, I mean, subject matter like that in any art is of course very powerful and very effective.
Well,
it's not I wouldn't describe this as a mini horror movie. There's one later on in the cycle which maybe is, but this one, the first one was really the Seven Sisters. Well, it was really certainly an unthreatening one, whereas straight in with number 2 with Medusa, it does have that element, and we developed that in the video, I think, didn't we?
Yes, in fact, this is a horrific state of being, which actually, if you've ever seen the film Awakenings, about the psychologist Oliver Sacks, these people go into a completely catatonic state for decades, and then he found a drug that woke them up for a short period of time, and then they went back into this catatonic state. And they were aware for those 40, 50 years what was going on around them, but they couldn't do anything. It's like Pushkin's Stone Guest, he's a statue, but he's stuck inside, he's a person stuck inside a statue not being able to move.
Yes, yeah.
Or it's like the Ice Queen in the one with the wardrobe, the children in the wardrobe, what's it called?
The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe.
Those statues that the Ice Queen freezes, they're still alive inside. And then, of course, coming in contemporary, it's the Weeping Angels in Doctor Who, isn't it? These.
Yes, and so. Yes,
and then
absolutely.
they move when they're not being watched.
Yes.
So it's actually quite a horrific idea.
Yeah.
So this frozen state of hysteria, you'd be going absolutely berserk in there, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Imagine stuck like that. Imagine us all stuck in our homes during lockdowns. It's worse than that. You can't go out.
That terrible feeling, as I say, as the performer, in this case, the solo viola part that I'm playing, and we've gotten to know the music that Marcus has written intimately. Again, in this piece, as in all the others, you captured the feeling that you just described very effectively in musical terms.
It's kind of a horror thing.
Yes, there's also there's a mini horror. So there's one later on which we'll talk about, which I think is the horror movie of this sequence. But it's certainly not far from that. Yeah. And from a technical point of view, some of the effects that composer Marcus has written for the viola, in terms of the Bartok pizzicato effect, which is nothing new, of course, but it never loses its power in terms of literally the snap of the sound of a string going onto a fingerboard. Combined with Sul Ponticello playing on the bridge technique, which creates an eerie texture, of course, very well known, and so on. Yes, I thought that we did very well with this video, and having done the first 2, my mission was to try and achieve the same level with all of them. Going on to number 3 now. So,
can I quickly say before we go to number 3 that I've always been interested in making new techniques, new forms, new ways of writing in every piece. Much in the same way that every piece of Beethoven is something new. It's not like I'm going to repeat myself. I wanted to create new techniques of playing, new ways of putting sounds together. And you've even said to me recently that I wrote down something that caused you to find a new way of playing the viola that you think has never been done before. So I'm always interested in doing that. And Xenakis once gave a piece to an organ player and said, see what you can make of that. Basically, I know you'll never get it right, probably nobody can, but see what you can make of it.
Right,
see how
it'll be your
how
own
you can do with that one.
Unique, yes.
So I'm very pro Xenakis in
Right.
this and many other ways.
Yeah, so would you say Xenakis is probably a primary influence, obviously, in composition in general?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to meet him and do some masterclasses with him when I was at the academy, and yes, he has had a strong influence without any doubt. I love.
I know a certain amount of Xenakis, but I'm certainly not the whole.
Sometimes I use stochastic techniques.
But I recognise elements from. I mean, maybe not in terms of the style of the music itself, but the general aesthetic is, to use that word again, of yes.
So that
your creating mind is coming from.
I interrupted you. Yeah,
No,
I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. So.